Peace everyone, Unmask here, and today I'm going to be doing an acrylic landscape with a sunset involved. So hopefully those that follow me on Instagram and such and Facebook, you will have noticed that I had the paint colors available for getting prepared for this tutorial. So to start off, I'm going to begin with the supplies that I'm going to be using. I'm using Liqutex Basic Paint, and I have the color palette available to you on the right side of the screen. So that will be there throughout the tutorial for your reference and for mine as well. The other thing that I'm going to be using is wide masking tape. I'm also going to be using an exacto knife to cut the tape with, and then a pencil, a bit of water, and some of the brushes that I'm going to be using. Actually, the 4 brushes that I'm going to be using is an angle brush, a number 6 filbert, and a number 1/2 flat brush, and then a small 5th round brush. So those are the brushes that I'll be using throughout this tutorial. And so let's go ahead and get started. You have the color palette over on the right side of the screen. So what I'm going to start by doing is using the masking tape. This is, as you'll notice, the panel that I'm painting on. I have 3/4 of it with cobalt and black, and then 1/3 of it with the this will be the Cad Red light hue plus black. So I just did a base coat of these, and it will make a bit more sense later on in the painting as why I did this. So the first thing that I'm doing is getting some masking tape. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay 2 pieces down on this 1/3 part of the panel. Now it's not long enough. So make sure you get your tape long enough so you don't waste any. So I'm just going to put a piece right along this edge here, like that. And I'm not too concerned about what it's doing on this side, so it'll just hold my panel a bit tighter to the table. This is a technique that I kind of have created throughout my years of painting, and I don't think I've really seen anybody else do this technique. It's something that I've kind of explained a few times on my drawing journal videos, but this definitely is a technique that has come from my childhood, from taping off cars with my dad. And I just always love the clean lines, and so that's what I'm doing here. Greetings, Lee. Thanks for coming in to the live stream. Okay, so the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add a layer of tape here, kind of at an angle. Actually, I'll just do it just like this. Straight across. And one small piece, it's not necessary, but I'm going to do it. I just want to have one piece right here in the corner. And then I'm going to do another line across here like this. Right down the middle, I'm going to have the bottom part of my tape across the middle of the panel, like this here. And I'm going to do one more, kind of in the middle there. So it doesn't have to be as long. This next one doesn't have to be as long, so it's just going to go right on top of this one here. Just like that. I know this kind of looks crazy, but this is the way that I love to paint, so that's the way I'm going to do it, and that's the way that I'm going to show you. So I'm going to cut off a bit of the edges here where they overlap, and I'm just kind of pushing with a firm, not too firm, but just firm enough to cut the top layer. Just like that. You can use your knife to pick it off. You don't have to press too hard to cut the masking tape. That's what I love about masking tape. And the kind of masking tape that I recommend you getting is the expensive kind in the department store or in the home craft store, because that's the best place to get it, where you the paint store where you would paint your house. They always have the best masking tape from my experience. Never get it from the cheap, never get the cheap tape. This is the most expensive tape that I could find here in Poland, and it works okay. It's usable. Alright, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to sketch our scene here. And I already have my scene planned out. As you can see from the thumbnail of this video, I had the kind of scene already planned out. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be creating kind of not necessarily a castle thing, but just kind of a city, like a fantasy type city kind of scene, I guess you could say. That's the best I got. Just kind of sketching it out. I'm not really using a really controlled idea. Just loosely sketching it. What you draw with the pencil is a lot less important than what we're going to cut out in the end. What you cut with the exacto knife is much more important than what you sketch out with the pencil. So be free with your sketch. Just have fun with it. And I'm not drawing a real city by any means. It's just kind of a tower and pointy stuff, to be honest with you. So nothing too concrete. Just some rectangles and different levels. And you want to have plenty of variation with these, just to create a nice nice visual interest. When you pull the tape off, eventually we'll pull the tape off and we'll be left with kind of this bluish city here against a nice silhouetted sunset. So that's the goal that we're shooting for here. Greetings, Lupita, for joining the chat. Thanks for coming to the live stream today. So my city is pretty much sketched out, and as you can see, it's fairly loose and free, and that's the way I recommend you do it. The details here aren't really going to matter all that much. It's going to be kind of faded out into the background, so don't worry too much about it. Just have fun. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to have this kind of stone wall coming here, and it's gonna be really close to the viewer. So perspectively, it's going to kind of stick out quite a lot and be very big because it's so close. Wall's going to just come down here. I could actually use the edge of this tape for the stone wall. In fact, I think I might just do that. So I'm going to just widen it up a little bit and use this edge, this straight edge, and that will save me from cutting. Anytime you can use the side of the tape instead of cutting is ideal. Then we're going to have some land coming down kind of like this. And then there's going to be a guy standing here in kind of like a cloak and like this, some boots. And of course a head. He needs a head. And he's just going to be kind of in there like that. And then the other thing that's going to be in the scene here is there's going to be a boat here next to him. And I planned all of this out. I planned this painting out in Photoshop first. So if you're wondering how I'm doing this so quickly, it's because I've already technically I've already painted this piece, but I did it digitally in Photoshop for the sake of this tutorial. I have everything prepared and ready to go just to make it a bit easier. Hello, Anne. Thanks for joining in the live stream. Yeah, so that's where the boat's going to be, kind of like that. You want to make sure that when you sketch these and you are preparing to cut it out, that you have a good idea of the perspective. So now I'm going to cut this out and peel away the excess tape. So this is kind of my premier tower. So I'm going to make sure that this tower is nice and straight. And you don't have to press too hard. The tape is easily cut, and I prefer to work on panel, not only because it allows me to cut a lot easier and safer as in regards to not cutting through my canvas, but I also am not a fan of texture. If you've been subscribed to my channel for any length of time, then you know that I'm not a fan of texture. So that's why I like to use panel. And you can cut tape with a skilled hand on canvas. So don't be shy. If you're a fan of canvas, you can still cut. I recommend a very sharp, new bladed exacto knife. I've probably been using this blade for way too long, certainly over a year. And one of the things you want to do is have your lines a bit cleaner with your sketch. And then basically what you'll do is you'll scrape the tape gently and get that first initial cut in there. And then from there, the tape will cut fairly easy. You just have to kind of keep scraping at it for a bit, and then the tape will cut and the canvas will not. I definitely recommend a few coats of gesso before doing that. A good undercoat will help strengthen the canvas and also make it a bit more difficult to cut through, which is what you want. So once we get all this cut out, you might be asking yourself, why go through all the trouble to, you know, cut this out of tape and then peel it off? Just, you're gonna have to paint it anyway. Why not just paint the sky and then paint right over top of it? And I have kind of two reasons for that. The first reason is I like the sharp lines that you get, that you can only get from taping off your edges. You can't get those kind of sharp lines painting by hand, because there's a level difference. So when I paint the sky and I peel this tape off and then I paint the buildings, there will be a visible level difference. Like, you have to look really closely, but there will be, you know, that edge of paint that you go over, and that makes it easier to paint all the way up to the line. You can actually push your paint up to that edge and it won't go over, and I like that because it makes painting the lines so much easier. And it's not too much trouble to do this. Like, once you get used to it and a bit better at it, it's really not all that difficult to set up a painting, tape off a few things, and then just cut it out with an X-Acto knife. And I've been doing this technique for quite a few years now, and it's never failed me, and I've never regretted it. And it's always gotten me the results that I wanted. Thanks for joining, everybody that's watching so far. Is there anybody following along right now with this painting tutorial? If so, feel free to ask me any questions that you might have regarding technique or supplies or anything like that. I also want to mention that this is going to be the last live stream tutorial, weekly tutorial, that I will have on YouTube without Patreon. So next week's tutorial will be a colored pencil tutorial live stream, and it will be available just to Patreon supporters. So if you want to get in on that, I do have my Patreon link in the description. It's only $5 a month, and you'll have access to the reference photo, the digital color palette, and also the live stream itself, where you can ask me questions, follow along. I will post the reference photo and color palette beforehand, a few days beforehand, so that if you do want to follow along and ask me questions, you can do so in the live stream. And I will be doing these tutorials every week, so 4 to 5 live tutorials every month for just $5. Okay, so I'm going to start peeling this tape off, and you want to be really careful with your edges, obviously, so that your tape doesn't rip where you cut, and just peel it off slowly. And if you get some of those small corners, you know, just kind of use the tip of your knife to go in there and pick it up. Just pick up the corner a little bit, and it will lift right off the canvas. And just work it right off the page, right off the canvas. So you can see the little tips up here can be kind of tricky sometimes, so just use your knife to hold it down and rip right there at the knife edge. And any parts that happen to come up, just kind of lay those back down with the tip of the knife. It'll be good. Sometimes where the tape double layers, you want to hold that down with the knife so that it peels up nice and easy and the line is nice and straight and crisp. Takes a bit of time, a little bit of practice doing this, but once you see the benefits, then you'll be more inclined to do such a technique. Like I said, I don't see too many people doing this technique, so. Forgot to hit record on my camera, but that's okay. I didn't do too much yet, so. When you're cutting to the tip here, you want to cut away from the tip, and that will help keep it sharp. So that's just one other tip for using the exacto knife. Cut, like if the tip is going this way, you want to cut away from it like that. The point of the towers and such. See, this one keeps wanting to lift off because I have to just cut it a little bit more. But there we go. Okay, so when you're, see, for right now I'm using a panel because I prefer panel over canvas. Canvas has way too much texture for me personally. It's a personal choice. So when working with panel, I don't need to be concerned about cutting. But when you're working with canvas, you can do it. You can do this technique on canvas. I've done it before. And it is a bit trickier. What you have to do, like let's say for instance, like I don't want to cut my table, but I'm perfectly happy with doing this on my table because I can tell that I'm not through the tape. And you're going to have to cut a bit slower, and you're going to have to go over the line a couple more times. Once you get a little bit of practice using the knife and cutting on canvas, you'll be able to feel the difference. You'll know exactly how much knife pressure you need to cut through the tape without cutting through the canvas. Because canvas is pretty tough. So especially high quality canvas that's thick, but also a couple layers of gesso will go a long way as far as keeping the canvas strong under the knife. Yes, you can paint on wood, but you have to be careful to make sure it's not treated with anything so that it doesn't eat your paint. Getting the pre-made panels and pre-treated primed panels is always a safe bet when it comes to painting. So that's what I have here. This is a Polish brand, so I'm not going to waste anybody's time by reading off the name because it's made in Poland. It's only available in Poland, and this is the first time that I've painted on it, so I'll let you know how it goes. But so far everything seems good. It has a good texture. It's like a nice medium texture, so nothing that I can't tolerate because, like many of you know, I'm not a fan of texture. So some of these little pieces can be kind of irritating to get, but it makes the difference in the end, making sure that they're out. But the other reason I like this technique is because if you think about it, you're kind of working around two lines when you have to paint the background and the foreground, especially if you say for instance I just went ahead and painted the sky. I just went ahead and painted the sky, and then my plan was to paint this on top of it. What I'd have to do is I'd have to be really careful where I place these buildings, and I have to be really close. I'd have to be really neat with my lines. My lines would have to be where I want them. I mean, there are some ways to kind of clean off the paint. So if I were to paint the background and then I'd want to paint something over top of it, I'd let it dry completely, and then I'd be able to use a little bit of water and a brush to kind of wash off the acrylic paint where I make my mistakes. But why do that? That's just adding one more potential step that's just going to waste time. So the reason I really like to do it this way is because I don't have to paint those lines. I draw those lines beforehand, like I did with this, and then I cut them out, which is easy and fixable. You know, if I were to mess something up, I could just lay down another piece of tape, and everything would be fine. So that's another reason I like to do this. And like I said, it can take a little bit of time, but it's not so much time that it's not worth doing. Because in the long run, I think that it saves a lot more time than it costs to do. I showed my sister this technique last summer. I was at her house and kind of just on vacation and visiting family and stuff. And we were bored one night, and I brought up the idea, hey, why don't we paint some Pokemon? And I posted the picture of that. I painted Dragonite, and I showed her my painting technique with acrylic and using tape. And it allowed us both to lay down tape, draw our Pokemon, and then cut the Pokemon out as a silhouette, and then just have fun with whatever background and not have to worry about drawing or painting within lines or anything like that, because once we were done with our background completely, all we did was peel off the tape, and there was the perfect silhouette of our Pokemon, and we no longer had to concern ourselves with lines while painting, because that can be time consuming to have to paint within the lines. What's easier to you, drawing inside the lines or painting inside the lines? As many years as I've been painting, I've been using tape, and I think that it's much easier to stay within the lines with a pencil than it is a paintbrush. So have I used masking fluid? No, I have not used masking fluid. However, I've been wanting to try it with watercolors. I've been wanting to try it with watercolors, but I don't know if masking fluid would work on this kind of panel or on canvas. Actually, since I've never used it, I don't have any experience with it, so I can't tell you whether or not it would be a better solution to this taping technique. But here's the thing with masking fluid. What do you have to do with it? You have to paint it on. So if I was to paint this on with masking fluid, I would have the same issues that I would if I were to just skip this taping technique and paint it on with acrylic paint. So I don't think that, I think I've ruled out the possibility of switching to that. But in terms of watercolor, I think that I would really, really like to try masking fluid for that technique and airbrushing as well. If I ever do upgrade to an airbrush, I would really like to, but I just don't have the means currently. But I think that this is coming out pretty well. I think I'm gonna like what this kind of castle city looks like once I paint in the sky and the water. Not too much. This is the more detailed portion. This part here is going to be pretty easy to cut out and peel off. So it's just this fine detail here that's a bit difficult, but once it's done, you only got to do it once. That's the best part. You only got to do it once, and then you just get to have fun with the background and carefree. And when I already established, you know, my perspective and my sketch and my idea, so now I just get to skip all the hard part and just have fun with the color. And that's what I have been just missing so much since I haven't painted in a while. Look at that, almost done. Yes, Alex, I am going to be painting the background first. That what I am taping off. So if you were to, you know, take this taping technique, the purpose of it is to cover what's going to be in the foreground, so that you can freely paint the background without any restriction to foreground objects. So it will become, this idea will become much clearer in about a half hour when I finish painting the sky. Well, hopefully sooner than that, because I'd hate to have to take that long to paint the sky. I haven't painted, like I said, I haven't painted in quite some time, so I really have no time frame for how long this is going to take. But once I get painting, I'll have a better idea. Let's see, so this piece needs to be straight down. And then from here, I'm just going to curve it out kind of like this. And then this here needs to go straight down. It's actually easier to make straight lines with a razor than it is with a pencil. You learn to have a lot of control with a knife after using this technique for as long as I've been using it. So I'm going to peel this off here, this section, and that will give you a little bit of an idea of what this is. It's kind of like a bridge, like a big archway bridge. There we go. You can see up at the top here, maybe you can see, but here it kind of ripped off in the wrong location. So I'm just going to take a little scrap piece of tape, just put it right over top of that. There. I got the angle. It's easy fix. Easy fix. Next thing is going to be this guy here. I'm going to just kind of cut a silhouette of him out a little bit. Now this detail here is a little less important. This is something that you could surely paint in, but I'm just doing a little silhouette of a guy, so it's no big deal to do. If it was a bit finer detail, then I could surely understand skipping that. I would definitely do it, but this isn't too bad. And this edge here doesn't really matter all that much because it's going to be blended in with the water. So it's one of those less important parts here as well. The boat, I think, is a very important part to have cut out. It's going to help it stand off the water even that much more. So it's going to add a lot of nice contrast to it. Okay, so now I'm going to peel this off, and this will be the last bit of tape that is necessary to peel off. So we're almost done with the tape part of it. Yeah, I agree with Anna or Anne from about the tape and masking fluid. I think that because of the thickness of the paint, it works a bit better to use tape with acrylics, whereas with masking fluid you might not be able to peel that stuff off if you paint over top of it. That's the beauty of the tape. You know, you can just slop all kinds of paint on top of it and peel it right off. And if you don't believe me, you can check out my video beneath the veil painting, and I'll prove that that statement is correct. The tape that I used for that painting was my all-time favorite masking tape. It's called Frog Tape, and it was the best tape that I've ever used for painting. And I wish that I could get it here in Poland, but unfortunately I can't. It was pretty expensive, but it was a treated masking tape designed for house painting. And it was treated with, you know, something that basically made the lines at the edge so clean. The lines at the edge were just incredibly clean because of whatever the tape was treated with. Alright, so the boring part is done. Now we have our outline, and you can kind of get a better view of what this painting is going to look like. Just get rid of some of that excess there. There. Now for the fun part, finally. Keep your knife handy for peeling off the rest of the tape. I don't know what that is there. So let's see, the first color that I'm going to be using is the Cad Red Light Hue. Cad Red Light Hue mixed with white. So I have my paint mixer somewhere here. I'm going to mix up a little bit of the Cad Red Light Hue. About that much. I want to have plenty of it. And then I'm going to mix it with a bit of white as well. And I'm using titanium white. For my black, I'm using the Ivory black. The difference between Ivory black and Mars black is Mars black is opaque. You can't really see through it when you paint. So the Ivory black is much better for layering and being able to see the undercolor that you use. I'm going to use I'm going to use about 20% white. So the amount of white that I'm using is a little less than the Cad Red. Put that there. And so I'm going to mix this, but after I mix this, before I start painting, I'm going to get the other colors for my sky really quick. So here's what this color is looking like mixed. Kind of a milky orange color. Kind of like a creamsicle color. That's going to be like the bright spot of the sky. I'm not going to mix it too well because I want to have some variation in that color. But I'm going to go ahead and get a little bit of the Brilliant Purple, the LP Pink, which is the light portrait pink, and then also some of the Cobalt. I'm going to mix those I'm going to mix all those colors up first before going ahead and starting. So the light portrait pink, I'm going to do the same amount, a little bit less actually. I'm going to do a little bit less, probably about the size of a pea, because I don't need too much of that. And then a bit of the white as well. And I'm going to do about 50% white with the LP pink. The titanium white is very opaque, so you don't have to use too much of it. When mixing with lighter colors, you can get away with a bit less than 50% to get a nice white, a nice light pink. So an extra light pink is what I'm going for. The next color that I'm using is going to be the Brilliant Purple color, also mixed with white. Again, about the same amount as the light pink that I used, about the size of a pea. And then some white. Mix that up a bit. And these are going to be my sky and watercolors. So that's what I'm going to be using this for. Most of the background is going to be a combination of these colors. And when it comes to painting the sky, I'm not going to try to keep my colors real clean because I want them to blend together overall in the painting. So I'm just going to slowly work out from there. And I want to have access to all my colors at one time, which is why I'm mixing them all right now. Because I don't want it to dry. I don't want it to dry too much on the canvas. So that I can mix it really well. The last color that I'm going to be mixing right now is the Cobalt and white. And I'm going to use a little bit less of this because I really don't need a lot in the sky. So not too much of that. And a bit of white. Almost finished mixing. I'm going to use about 60-40 mixture with the cobalt and white, so it's about 60% white, 40% cobalt. And that way I get it a little bit lighter because the cobalt is a bit darker than the other colors. So now I'm just going to mix it up. So here's my colors. I hadn't mixed. I did not mix the light pink and white yet, but I'll do that with my brush. But I'm going to start off with this color, and then from there I'm going to work this direction. And basically, when starting out with around the tape, you want to work away from the edge. Just work away from the edge like this. And it's going to take a couple layers to get rid of that dark blue that I used for the underpainting and also the brown over here. I'm just kind of working around the tape. I want to be gentle around those edges to make sure that when I peel the tape off, it's nice and crisp. And I'm going to go all the way over here. And I'm also going to start working in the orange for the water as well. Just kind of that. This color here is the Cad Red light hue plus white, just in case you're wondering. Once we get a couple layers here around the tape in the vertical direction, then you can start to lay it on a bit thicker without so much concern for the edge. Because once you kind of get that edge blocked off, it gets a bit easier to paint over it. And when you're working with the sky, you want to make sure that your final brush strokes are horizontal, because it kind of hides it. It hides the brush strokes in the sky horizontally, and you want to do the same thing with the water. That just helps reinforce the movement and the texture that you get in the water. I'm going to add a bit of water to my paint as well, just to thin it out just a little bit, going on a little thicker than what I want. Oh, thank you, Zingcat, for the lovely comment. I'm glad that I can start your day off well with a nice painting. And add a bit more water. So I'm just going to go right onto the canvas. That's this layer is starting to get a bit dry, and the way you can tell is it starts to get tacky when you brush over it. It feels kind of sticky to the brush. So that means the next layer will get a bit better coverage. And I don't want to start moving on too quickly. I want to make sure that I cover up that blue really well. And if you keep that last layer a bit watery, it will help with the blending of the next color. Add a bit more water. Go down here into the water. It's kind of mirroring the sky, so I'm just working on both sides. This is my horizon line here, where the tape ends and the water begins. So I'm going to just go ahead and jump into the next color. And like I said, I didn't mix the pink and the white, so I'm just going to kind of mix it with my brush a bit before putting it on there. I didn't clean my brush. I still have that Cad Red and white mixture on my brush. So this is just gonna blend right in there. You can see it's a lot brighter. And I'm gonna work that down kind of slowly and just let it blend together. It's a bit tacky, so I'm gonna add just a touch of water. Now make it smoother on the panel. And don't forget about the water too. Add some there. Having the dark background and doing the lighter colors on top, it does take a few layers for it to start working and start covering all that up. So we might have to go back and do another layer to make it look good. I think that the dark spots kind of add a sense of clouds and a bit of dimension to the sky and to the water, so I don't think it's too important to go back, fix that. You can see some of the orange coming through off of the brush. Add a bit of water to kind of get rid of tackiness. Now I'm going to switch over to the next color. I'm going to clean my brush off a little bit, not too much, just want to get off some of that excess paint. And scrape it off on the cup. Get rid of the excess water. Not too clean. It's not too clean of a brush, so not too much cleaning involved here. Give me a nice purple color. Nice lavender purple color. Just going to blend it into the light pink and kind of get some coverage for the rest of the sky here. Just cover as much as I can. I think what I'll do is I'll start over and go back to the orange and work my way back through before trying out the blue. Add a little bit of water to my brush. Mix it in with the paint. Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't paying attention. I apologize for that. I wish I had a sound. I wish it would make a sound when it does that. Can anybody tell me about how long that was like that? That's my camera, so I have a little issue with my current camera. It only lets me record for 30 minutes at a time, and then the sensor closes. So I get those little messages every half hour. So hopefully it wasn't on there too long. I apologize for that. If you want to help me get a new camera faster, you can always pledge over on my Patreon page, where I'll be doing more of these tutorials every week. Alright, I'm going to add some purple down here into the water before this paint down here dries. Add just a bit of water. Oh goodness, 2 minutes? I'm sorry. I was so into painting that I hadn't been looking up at the chats to see your message that it happened. So I apologize. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start over, and I'm going to go back to my Cad Red white mix. So the first color that I started with. I still have plenty of paint here. I'm going to add a bit of water just to get it a bit smoother. And I really want good coverage here. So I want to make sure that I cover up all that dark color. I've pretty much used up all of this color so far. So I don't want to have to remix it. Now I'm going to switch back to the pink. I'm going to add a little bit of water. Just start blending it out loosely, very loosely. The sky is going to start getting a bit softer now because all that dark blue that was underneath is going to start going away, so it's going to brighten up the sky a lot. I'm just going to keep adding a bit of water. To blend everything together. And just kind of, I'm not doing a lot of pressure on my brush, kind of just a soft pressure along the edge of the pink and the orange there. You can see some of the pink is being washed off by the brush. That's what happens when the layers aren't completely dry. And instead of laying more paint down, it starts picking paint up. Now I'm using the brush a bit sideways here in the water to start creating some of those water ripples that you'll see. And I'm just using the side and just creating a bit of lines to get the water texture. Nice straight horizontal lines. Now I'm going to switch to the purple, get a little bit of water on my brush and just kind of mix it. Not really cleaning the brush, just getting kind of all of the purple on there, mixing it with the light pink blend and just moving it up. Try to cover up some of those spots too. Get down here in the water before it all dries. Also, having all the paint on the brush at once kind of just gives everything a nice blend. That's what I'm doing. Now I'm going to switch to the final blue color, and I'm going to do this with adding a little bit of water, and I'm going to just clean off my brush just a little bit and just get rid of some of that excess paint that's on there, and then just kind of blend it right into the blue. Kind of just go up here to the top. I only want like subtle amounts of the blue. Since it's a sunset, the blue in the sky is kind of going away at this time of day, and you only get it far away from where the sun is actually setting. So there's not too much blue left in the sky at this point. Just at the very top. And I'm gonna add a little bit of the cobalt blue without any white, just to get a slightly darker tone in the sky. I'm going to add some reflections into the water with the blue though, using the brush horizontally like this and just kind of brushing a few in. So put that brush aside for a second and grab the Cobalt blue, and I'm just going to get a little bit of it, just the smallest amount right there on my palette, just a tiny little dot, because that's really all I need to add just a bit of a vignette to the sky, just to bring in the focus a little bit. I'm going to use that same brush, get rid of some of the excess paint, and I'm just going to dip my corner of the brush, just the smallest amount, like so small. Kind of dab it there and then blend it out. And some down here in the water as well. The cobalt blue is perfect sky blue for sunsets. It's just, it has just the perfect color. Add a touch of water to just blend it out a little bit. I'm going to clean my brush off pretty thoroughly, and I'm going to just kind of brush over everything one last time with kind of a damp brush, clean but damp. I don't want any of that dark color in the light areas, so I'm making sure it's nice and clean. I'm just going to brush it kind of lightly. This is just going to help blend out some of the imperfections a little bit and get rid of any extra brush strokes. There's a bit of a hole there in the sky right here that isn't really all that fixable. So I'm going to try to get some of the last little remaining purple and cover it up. I mean, it kind of looks like it could just be clouds, so it's not too important. And I'm going to add some of it down here and help cover up some of those imperfections, or what I see as imperfections there. Right. So I'm going to clean my brush. I'm going to clean my brushes a little bit, and then I'll have some more paint to mix. So far, it's not too bad. I'm glad you like my color palette so far. Oh, no need to apologize, Chrissy. Thanks for joining. So here is kind of the base layer for the sky and for the water, if you're just tuning in. The next thing that I'm going to add is a bit of mountains. I'm going to add some mountains to the back. And I'm just cleaning my brush right now. And then I'm going to start mixing some paint for the next colors. I'm going to be using the Alizarin Crimson, a bit more of the brilliant purple, and also some of the Cobalt mixture. And that's what I'm going to be using for the mountains in the back. The base coat for the mountains is going to be the Alizarin Crimson. The kind of shadow, the mid-range shadow area is going to be the brilliant purple, and then the darker shadow is going to be the cobalt and white. So I already have some of the Cobalt, so that's fine the way it is. I'm going to mix a bit more of the Brilliant Purple, but this time it's going to be a bit darker than the sky. So Brilliant Purple. I'm just going to mix it in the same spot that I did for the sky, since I'm going to be adding less white. It's not as important to make sure that it's clean. For the new color, the Alizarin Crimson, obviously I'm going to use a different slot on my color palette over here. So I see a few of you are liking the color choice right now. That's always good to hear. All right, there I have some of the Alizarin Crimson on my palette now. The last color, actually that's it. Now I just need to add a bit of white. I'm not going to use a lot of the Cobalt blue, similar to the sky. So what I have on there right now is plenty. I'm just going to add a bit of white to my colors here. So all the colors are a bit darker, so I'm going to be adding a little less white to them this time. It's always good to kind of add a bit less white than what you think. You can always add a bit more, and white is always a bit easier to get than these colors. So don't be afraid to save your colors and then generously use your white. All right, so for the mountains, I'm going to use, let's see here. I'm going to start, I think, with the Brilliant Purple mixture, and then I'll kind of shape out the mountains, and then I'll add the Alizarin Crimson and white blend in order to create the highlights, and then a little bit of Cobalt blue I'll mix in there just to create some nice shadows on the mountains. And as far as texture goes, just kind of I recommend just being loose with the texture, because you want the mountains to have plenty of variation so that they look like mountains, but you'll notice that the colors are still quite pastel and desaturated because they're far away. So you don't want them to be too valued, and that will help it give the effect that they're in the distance as opposed to up close. So you don't have to go strong with the detail. You don't have to go strong with the colors. That's the rule there. As far as keeping things in the back, so I'm going to be using an angled brush to get nice sharp lines. And like I said, I'm going to start with the purple, the Brilliant Purple and white, and let's just create some mountains. So this is how I'm using at this angle, and I'm just going to kind of build. I'm just going to kind of build them like this, so like if I were doing trees. And give it just plenty of variation. These are going to be kind of sharp mountains, so And then once I have kind of the composition and shape, just the general shape, think of it like sketching, I'm going to turn my brush and just drag the paint straight down. So I'm kind of building up a lot of paint at the top. That's what you'll see. Kind of a lot of paint near the top, so that when I drag it down, it brings that paint with it, and then it will create a nice effect. So I'm just going to create a nice sharp line at the top, follow the direction that I've been doing, and then drag it straight down, just like this. And this is a brilliant purple is the perfect name for this color because it is brilliant indeed. It is very nice looking. And as you can see, I'm just completely ignoring where I taped things off, just focusing on what I'm doing with the mountains. You can see some of the sky color is coming through, which is just perfect because it helps those mountains sit on the canvas much nicer. Lets it sit in the scene and look like it belongs there. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'm happy to answer as many questions as I can. Now, just going to give that a chance to dry a bit. I'm going to use a little bit more and try to get some more coverage down here at the bottom. And I'm actually going to pay attention to how I do that. I'm going to add another layer kind of right in front of it of mountain, and let that orange show through a little bit. And this is going to be mountains that just are just a tad bit closer, just a little bit closer. Like I said, you don't want to try to be too perfect with your mountains because they'll start looking a lot less like mountains. You want to have plenty of variation in there. I'm actually going to add just a little bit of the cobalt blue right now to darken up my brilliant purple, just to help create some of those closer mountains. And blend it nicely like that. So here's a little bit closer mountain. Here's some closer mountain right there, and then over here, and just like that. Next color that I'm going to introduce is that Alizarin crimson and white mixture. And add a little bit of water to my brush real quick. Not too much water. I don't want to wash the paint away. But before I add that, I want to add some mountains to the water. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to mirror it right over my horizon line. So I kind of have the peak of this mountain here, kind of going like this, and a peak here, and then it kind of goes down. It gets a little bit here, just kind of varies. And I'm just dragging it up towards the horizon, kind of creating my sharp lines. Just like that. Get a little bit more of that purple and just paint it all in right there. I'm using short horizontal strokes to kind of create that water texture and make the tops of those mountains a bit uneven where they hit the water, and just kind of give it a ripple effect. change my brushstroke horizontally instead to compensate for the water texture. And I'll add some of the cobalt blue back into it just to change those colors a little bit there at the base. Create a bit of variation there to compensate for the different layers of the mountains coming through. I'm going to clean my brush a little bit and go back through with some of my alizarin crimson. Just a bit of it. I didn't put too much on my palette. I just want to kind of create some highlights on the mountains, and I'm just kind of pushing and dragging down a little bit. This is going to give your mountains much more dimension, and then we'll go through and we'll add some shadows. So I'm using the angle brush like I mentioned, and I'm just kind of pointing it where I want some of those edges to be, and then dragging it down from there. And this is going to give the mountains a kind of a sense of lighting from the right side here. And I'll do the same in the water. Just add a bit of the alizarin crimson and white mixture into the water, just to get the colors showing up. And you can be really playful in the water because water does all kinds of funny things to reflections. So. No, I'm not. Other than water, I'm not using anything to change the consistency of my acrylic paint. I'm just using a little bit of water and then the paint itself however it comes out of the tube. It is a bit tacky, and I probably will order some medium in the future to add to my acrylic paint other than water, just to help, control the consistency, give it a little bit more flow. All right, now that the highlights are done, without cleaning my brush, I'm just going to go in, and I'm taking my raw cobalt and mixing it with my previously light blue cobalt, and just getting a kind of a medium between those two. Because value-wise, I want it to be a bit darker than both the purple and the brilliant purple and the alizarin crimson. So I'm just kind of mixing it all together. And this is what I came up with here. I just mixed it all together. And I don't want a whole lot of it on the brush, so I'm cleaning my brush off, getting rid of all the paint, and then getting rid of the water. And I'll go back through and just touch a little bit of it. It's kind of watery. And now I'm going to go through and add some shadows. It's a nice, very bright blue. It's a bit too bright in some spots, so I'm going to have to fix it. Add a little bit to the water down here. Just do some water streaks across. So in some areas it came off a bit brighter than what I want, so I'm just cleaning my brush, and I'm just going to go back and kind of blend the colors together a bit more, especially here on this tall mountain. Just kind of blend it together and make it a little less contrasted to the other colors, just like that. And I do want, I'm gonna grab a little bit of my purple, a little bit of my cobalt mixture, and mix them together just a little bit, because what I want to do is I want to create a nice sharp line for my mountains. Nice sharp line. for each of the mountains so that they stand up off the sky a bit more. And that's kind of the purpose of using the angled brush, is it helps get those sharp lines a little bit better than a different brush. Mountains are also something that you could potentially tape off if you wanted to add that extra step. But in this case, mountains are so much easier to do than like a building or something. So that's why I chose not to do the mountains, tape off the mountains, but I did tape off the building and foreground objects. Just cleaning my brush, and I'm going to take some of that blue and just try to blend it out again and make it a bit more even with the other colors. Just soften everything up a little bit more. So I'm just kind of scraping it horizontally and just blending it out. The texture is quite extreme. So I'm going back through with a bit more of my purple, because I noticed that the orange is still at the base a bit and of my buildings. So I want to make sure that I have that orange covered up completely here at the base. If not completely, I do want it covered enough that the mountains don't look orange, completely orange at the bottom. So I kind of have this spot here where there's just a bit too much orange coming into the mountain. So I'm just using a little bit of my brilliant purple and white mixture to soften it up a little bit. It's not too important to make it go away completely, but getting it to go away a little bit is certainly a good idea. I'm going to add some darker colors here and kind of get some trees put in. And what I'm going to use for that is more of the Cobalt. There, I saw the message that time. So I'm going to add just a touch of Cobalt to my palette here. I'm going to use that for some trees. But what I'm also going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of the cadmium red light hue also to my Cobalt mixture. And the reason I'm doing that is because it's kind of a complement. So orange and blue, they complement one another. So anytime you mix the complement color to each other, it is going to desaturate it a bit and kind of give you a little bit brownish color. And that's what I'm going to use for the trees here. I don't want it to be too brilliant blue. I want it to be a bit desaturated, have some greenish to it. That's what's going to help me do that. And for this, I'm going to switch back to my flat brush. Here you can see my mixture of the Cad light hue, the Cad Red light hue, and the Cobalt. And I'm just kind of filling up the brush a little bit. I'm also mixing in some of the lighter Cobalt white mixture because I don't want it too dark. I just want it to have a little bit of variation, and I'm just going to go through and kind of tap in some trees. And this technique is pretty much self-explanatory. I'm literally just tapping my brush kind of vertically And trying to keep the top of the trees dark. I have some of the light on the back of the brush and some of the dark on the front of the brush. That's going to give me kind of a cool effect. And I'm just tapping it kind of like a, I don't know, 60-degree angle maybe. And just slowly tapping across, adding tons of variation to the level of the trees. I'm going to work it down all the way into the water, all the way to the edge of the water, I mean. And now I'm going to flip my brush over and I'm going to do the same thing to the water. And just add those trees in there a bit. Just in a couple areas because most of these are going to be covered up by the reflection of the little castle city thing. Thanks, Anne. I'm glad you like the way it looks so far. Hello, Bigelow Arts. Welcome to the live stream. Thanks for joining. There we go. Now, after I do that, I'm just going to go horizontally and kind of fade those colors a little bit into the water with some horizontal strokes. Add a little bit of water to my brush so that I can get that effect a bit more. Not too wet. I'm tapping my brush off on the cloth on the paper towel there, so it's just a damp brush going across horizontally like this. And I'm going to add some of the darker Cobalt and Cad Red mixture right along the horizon, or right along the water line a little bit, just like this. Get some of the dark colors. And if your line is getting a bit too textured, you can add a bit of water to your brush. That'll help smooth it out a little bit. And I'll even do a little bit of this color up here near the water edge for my foreground objects, just to bring in some of that color into the foreground. It's always a nice idea to introduce all the colors in certain spots on the painting. That way the painting starts to be a bit more well balanced and the colors fit in with each other. And add some more detailed water lines here, just texture. Even into the orange part, don't be afraid to add it there and just add some of the, the water ripples. What's going to give the water that nice reflective quality. And super thin lines. I'm barely even touching the canvas at this point. Alright, so I'm going to add even a bit more trees. I'm going to get into the darker parts of my Cobalt here. And I'm going to add a layer of trees right in front of my first layer. That way it looks a bit more three-dimensional, because right now it's a little flat. Introducing a bit more value into the painting as well is going to help bring it to life. So you want to slowly build up your values when you're working with a landscape. Your lightest values being very far away, and then your darkest values being the focal point and the foreground for your painting. Add a bit of water to my brush and just kind of fade all that stuff in there. There we go. All right, so the next thing that I'm going to do is going to be the fun part. It's going to get real fun now. So I'm going to peel off the buildings here. I'm going to start peeling off the buildings. I'm going to add some fun detail to this. So I'm going to grab my knife again, and I'm just going to get underneath the edge of this tape here and start peeling it back. This is going to be nice and contrast, and it's just going to look awesome. And then we'll go in with some colors and add some awesome details to it, and just, it's going to be great. Check that out. See, this is why I love to tape things off. This is my favorite part about taping things off, is that you don't get these sharp lines anyway. You don't get them any way else. You have to do it. And it's just the best. I want to go through and I want to make sure that I get all my tape off in the little corners that I had it, and make sure that it's all gone. I don't want to leave any of those details. I took the time to cut it out, so I want to take the time to make sure I have it all off. There we go. See that? Isn't that awesome looking? So what I'm going to do with this now is I'm going to take a little bit of my cobalt and a little bit of black and get kind of a desaturated darker cobalt and start adding in some of the shadows of these buildings here. A little bit of my cobalt. And some black. This is the ivory black. This is the more translucent looking black, and it goes over other colors more translucently, so the other colors kind of show through. And this right now, this isn't black here. It might appear black because it's so contrast in comparison to the background, but it's actually originally that mixture of the cobalt and black. So I'm just doing that over again. And I think the brush that I'm going to use is going to be a bit smaller, maybe. Let's see. I think I only have this one flat. Yeah, so it's going to be that angle brush. It's going to be that same angle brush that I used for the trees. And the reason being is because I'm going to be creating a lot of corners and creases and things, and so I want those. I want to have that control, and that angle brush lets me do that. Lets me get those nice sharp corners. So I'm mixing in that cobalt and black. This is kind of be the shadow of these buildings here. I'm going to add a little bit of the leftover purple that I had, the brilliant purple and white. I'm just going to mix that in there too. I hate to waste the paint. So just have fun with it, mix in some of your paints. And this is going to give me kind of a grayish color with the mix of the black and the cobalt. It's going to be kind of a nice cool gray, which is going to really stick out along these all these light bright colors, all these warm colors that I have so far. I'm just going to get some paint on my brush, and I'll start on the left, and I'll just kind of go in and add some of the details to the sides. I'm basically thinking about these shapes and how they're going to be shaded. So all to the left side of these are going to be kind of this bluish tone, because that's the shaded side of these buildings. And it doesn't take a lot. You can kind of draw in all kinds of shapes. I'm going to cut the water line a little bit as I go. If you have a smaller angle brush, I definitely recommend using that one, because this one's a bit big for the small detail that I'm doing. In fact, when I do the highlights, I think I probably switch brushes to kind of just a small round brush so that I can get those details in a bit easier. And just kind of play around with, what you're doing with the blank areas, draw in some other buildings and kind of just keep everything nice and square, and you should be fine. Leave some gaps. It doesn't have to make too much sense. That's the real secret. It really doesn't have to make a lot of sense, because what you see and what the viewer sees is going to be two completely different things. So what I see in this painting right now, you see it a completely different way. And the way that I see it is, as the creator, is a whole bunch of mistakes. I'm pretending like this painting's really good, but I see a bunch of mistakes and things I can change in the future. But for the viewer, it doesn't appear that way. It's completely different. So you can see that this mixture here is softening up those buildings, and it's kind of pushing them back, and it's bringing out some of the detail. Just a little bit though, not too much, because this is still barely the focal point of the image. And this is part of the reason that I chose the color that I did for the underpainting of this section of the painting, because now we're gonna do something fun here. We're gonna just put like this random arch, just this big arch right here, because for no reason. I don't remember what I was saying. But yeah, so the purpose of the underpainting was kind of to get these colors prepared to lay down on top of each other. There we go. Just adding some kind of random details. I really have no idea what I'm creating here. I'm just kind of creating some lines, blocking in some shapes, and then saying, look at me, I'm painting. So just be random with it and have fun, and don't worry about it, because that's exactly what I'm doing. I mean, like I said at the beginning of this video, I haven't painted in almost a year. It's almost been a year since I've painted, and the very first painting that I attempt to do after all that time off is a live stream tutorial, so not a whole lot of room for error. There we go. Maybe so tad bit of detail there, just for the sake of it. Yeah, I like that. So The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to use, let's see here, I'm going to use a little bit of the brilliant purple. So I'm going to bring in some of the color from the mountains, actually. I need to get a little bit more brilliant purple onto my palette here. And I'm just going to use the same spot here, this messy, dirty spot, because I'm not too concerned about the purity of the color. At this time, there's no sense in being concerned about color purity. Everything needs to sit inside this painting, so color purity is pretty irrelevant. I'm going to mix a little bit of white with this just to give it some opaqueness and desaturate that brilliant purple a little bit. But I'm also going to mix in this cobalt mixture as well. So I'm just going to go crazy with it and blend it all together and just get the color variation that I'm looking for. Because I want it to be desaturated enough so that it doesn't look exactly like the mountains, because that's what I don't want. I don't want this brilliant purple and white to match the mountains. I want it to have a touch of the mountains, kind of reflective. I'm going to add a little bit of that and just kind of get it where I want. I don't want it too bright. That's the thing. I don't want it too bright because I want it to fit with the rest of this building. And I'm going to use my smaller round brush to paint in some windows and just some finer details. So here's the brush I'm using. It's a bit small, but and for this small of a brush, you're going to want to keep it kind of wet to keep the paint flowing off of it a bit easier. I'm just going to go in and add some highlights here and there, and just kind of add some little details and things. This is going to be the highlight, so if you have a building in mind, it's going to shine on the right side of it. Just like that. And you can add all kinds of fun details with this color here. Now the thing with this brush, in comparison to having a smaller angle brush, is that getting smooth straight lines is a bit harder. And that's actually what you would prefer. So if you have a small angle brush, I recommend using that, because getting the small sharp angles is a lot easier with the angle brush. You can get those nice sharp corners and things. But this brush will do fine. This color might actually be a bit too light in value, so I'm actually going to probably go over it a little bit with another color. I'm going to add some orange as well to some of these highlights. You can see some of the orange kind of, maybe you can see, but some of the orange actually is peeking through around the edges of these of this city castle thing, which is kind of nice because it adds a nice rim light to this scene overall. Now for the centerpiece here, I want to make sure that my line's a bit neater. I hope everybody's having fun with this painting as much as I am. It has been so much fun painting. I can't believe it's taken me so long to get back to holding a brush. Been doing so many colored pencil work, I've almost forgot what it's like to paint. But I'm grateful for everybody that came to the live stream to hang out and watch me do this for the first time. I haven't done very many painting videos on my channel, but I am certainly going to be doing more. I intend to do at least one painting tutorial a month for my Patreon supporters. So if you're interested in more of these painting live stream tutorials, you can head over to my Patreon page, and for $5 a month you'll have access to all of my live streams. I'm doing this live stream today just kind of as a promotional thing for my Patreon page. Almost said Kickstarter. Not yet, anyway. Okay, so I want to get a little bit of my Cad Red and white mixture that I used for the sky. So just a tiny amount of the Cad Red, just almost scraping the cap, and then quite a bit more white. Actually, instead of using white, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mix it in. I'm just going to mix it into my highlight color there, the kind of brilliant purple grayish cobalt mixture. So I have that mixture that I just laid down, and I'm just going to grab a little bit of it and mix it in with my Cad Red light hue. And it kind of creates like a muddy color, but that's okay. That's what I want. I don't want it to be too bright. I'm just going to go through and use it to add some color variation to the highlights, just along the edge. And this is going to give it that sun-touched effect. And it really is quite muddy looking on my color palette. But when it shows up in contrast to the surrounding colors, it's quite bright looking. So that's perfect. Add a bit of water so that it doesn't lay down completely. Just kind of tinting the highlights that's already there. It's going to give the building a nice sun-touched effect. And now I'm just being a bit more playful, throwing it down. I really don't have a lot of paint on my brush at all. It's mostly just water. And this is kind of the benefit of having it taped off as well, because I'm not really even paying attention to the line, which is nice. I have the drawing, everything that's already there, so I'm good there. I think for this painting that's pretty good. I don't want to add too much detail, and because I could just sit here all day painting this, but I'm going to add some of the orange, the water back here, just kind of blend it out with some water. These are going to be the ripples that are cutting through, getting that orange. This adds a nice complement to those blue colors that are right there. It's a nice complement to them. All right, so the next thing that I'm going to do is another fun part. So I'm going to just take the rest of the tape off. This is another favorite part of mine. So let's grab my exacto knife real quick, just in case I need it. And let's take this off. See those edges? I can't say it enough. You're not going to get those edges by painting. You're not. You gotta tape them. That's why I love tape. This is why I'm called Unmask Art. Because I love tape. It's not 100% of where I get my name, Unmask Art, but it's like 60% of my name. You would think that I would paint more, but I got so into colored pencils I forgot painting. And we barely have anything left to do. Let me take off the boat, so I have this tape here for the boat. Little piece of tape right there. And that's it for the boat. We don't have very much painting left to do. Because this is all pretty much silhouette. So I have some colors already here, and I'm just going to throw them down and use them as much as I can to kind of draw in what's happening here in the scene. So I'm going to use my angle brush again, and I'm just going to use a bit of this leftover Cobalt mess here, and I'm just going to paint in some of the things that's happening here. So I kind of have this column right here that's being, give it some dimension here, and it's kind of curving up like this, or probably closer to this here, like that. And it's a big stone column that's like this, and it has some stones and whatnot. I'm just going to kind of brush it in a little bit and give it some texture. I don't want to go too bright with any of these colors, so I'm going to keep my paint pretty translucent with some water, and nothing at this point really is going to mess up this painting unless I just go insane. But now at this point, it's all about playing with the reflections and just kind of getting some of the stuff, getting some of the reflections and just kind of adding a bit of texture and having some fun. So nothing too much, nothing too crazy. This is kind of rocks here, so I'm just gonna add some texture there and make it bumpy looking. And this here is the other side of this kind of stone arch. So just playing around with it a little bit. And I'm using a bit of the colors that I have left, just to kind of create a bit of the texture and highlights and Let's see, I'm going to add a little bit of the crimson, the alizarin crimson, just some highlights here. All this is pretty much going to be painted again, so I'm just kind of establishing a little bit of, what's going on here. Rocky beach kind of area here, so adding quite a bit of water to my brush to kind of wash away some of this paint. Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. Sorry. Hopefully that wasn't going on for too long. I got into the painting. I got into the painting. Let's see here. So I still have some of this cobalt here. I'm just gonna mix it in with a bit of the alizarin crimson, kind of get this purpley tinted color here a bit. Sorry. I forgot about my camera. How long? Can you tell me how long it was up there for? All right. So now I'm just adding a bit of the highlight over here. And some of it back here, just scribbling it in. Some of the cobalt color. I'm literally just scribbling. So if it looks like anything more than scribbles, then, well, I'd be amazed. I'm just kind of scrubbing it in and getting some of those colors. Yeah. I need kind of a darker color at this point because I don't have any. So I'm going to take some of my Cad in black, which was the color of the underpainting. So I'm just going to take not too much of it. I don't need a lot of this at this point, just a bit. But hopefully it's hello Hetty, thanks for joining. It's a bit late, but it's always better late than never. But I'm glad you like the piece so far. It's a lot of fun. I'm just getting some of the black there. My mixing knife. And mix those colors together. And the Cad Red light hue and the black really just makes a dark brown. But it's a nice warm brown, which is very fitting for this painting. This is a very warm painting. And I'm just going to take a smaller brush. That way the texture is a bit more varied. So I'm just kind of blocking in some details with a smaller brush. It's going to be harder to make things smooth with this brush, which is why I'm choosing it. And because of that, it's going to look more rocky, it's going to look more varied, and just overall better. And I'm going to go through some of the shadowed parts. Just like this. Just add some detail, some rock texture, nothing Nothing too crazy, just a bit of variation and shadow. Give him a shadow, so he's right here. So the cast shadow is going to be real long. So it's going to kind of look like this. A long cast shadow. And then of course this huge gigantic pillar thing is going to have a nice long cast shadow too, and it's going to be huge. So I'm just going to kind of draw it back away from my perceived light. It's kind of like that. As you can see, there's plenty of variation. Trying to use a smaller brush to create longer brush strokes, it's going to be really uneven, which is exactly what I want. I want it to be nice and uneven. It's going to give me that texture that I want. You're probably wondering, there's something missing with this piece, and you're exactly right. There is something missing with this piece, and I'm going to get there, I promise. And if you don't see it, then I tricked you. I skipped a bit, but I'll get there. Don't worry. So there we go. I think that's good for ground variation. I don't know. I could probably add, let me do this. Let me get my angle brush. So check this out. I'm just freestyling a little bit here, but I feel like it needs. I feel like it just needs a little something, just a tiny something. So I'm gonna just. What if a tree just kind of like grows out here like this? I need it to be a bit darker, so let me get some of the black there. A bit darker. Now I'm really calling out my inner Bob Ross. Just throwing a tree there. There. I think that's better. And then maybe a few little grass thingies coming off. Yeah, I think that's what it needed. That's what it needed. Has it been less than 2 hours? I didn't even realize that it was less than 2 hours. I can't believe I painted this in 2 hours. Let's get a little bit brighter with some of these highlights here. All right, so I'm just going to kind of scribble on some color for him, like that. I'm going to get my small detail brush now and add a little bit of detail to the boat here in a second. So let's do kind of a line down here, and then just a bit of this. Need to get some brighter color into this, so let me just use some of this. This is kind of the highlight color that I used for the buildings here. Just get it in there kind of like that. At this point, you should still be like looking at this piece thinking there is something wrong with this piece. There is just something missing. And I promise I'm getting to it if you know what it is. I need a bit more orange. I need some more orange in my life. I'm gonna use some of this red first. Just add some of this Alizarin crimson mix to the boat. Add some highlight. Get in here with some. If I have any blue left, I have some blue. Just add some water. And get dark again. Go. Add some subtle details to this guy here, but I'm going to do something special with this guy that I had planned all along. Okay, now I'm going to do it. Now I'm going to do it. I'm going to tell you what I've been skipping the entire time, and it requires my very dirty at the moment flat brush. So if you've noticed, there is no reflections in the water except for the mountains and the sky. You thought I was going to forget, but I didn't. So I'm just gonna grab the colors that I used for the tower here, and I'm just gonna kind of do this a little bit and get some spikes where where this tower stuff comes up, and just kind of blend it in. And I'll get some of the lighter colors here in a moment, and do a little bit more blending in the water. So I just kind of used, I literally just used some of the colors that I have left on the palette to do this reflection. Just like that. So that gives the reflection there, and then I need to add some reflection for this boat over here, so I'm going to grab a little bit of my brownish color that I used on the boat, and just this detail here needs to be a bit finer. Just like that. And of course I need a rope coming down. That's a terrible rope. Maybe it's a net. That's just 2 ropes. There. That works. Now I need some lighter colors. Let me empty that a little bit. I have a little bit of light color. Some of the purple, some of the brilliant purple and white, I still have a little bit of that here. So I'm going to just dip my brush into that. Add a little bit of water. Oh, I need this brush to be nice and sharp. I'm just going to wipe it on my edge, wipe it on the edge a little bit. I don't want too much paint just a little bit, add some of this last little bit of watermark lines, and get rid of this sharp edge here. So I'm going to kind of blend over top. This is going to look a little bit like water coming up on the shore here. Just a little bit. And then also back where I painted the reflection. A little bit of water lines here for that reflective quality. There. Now, for the one color, I saved it all the way to the end. The phthalo blue. The only reason I have phthalo blue, this is the real secret here. So the real secret, the reason I have phthalo blue on my color list, if you've been paying attention this close, then you know that I haven't used any of the phthalo blue. And the reason I saved it for this last little bit is because it is the perfect complement to the orange sky, and so I'm going to use it in this guy here. His cloak here is going to be this blue color, this phthalo blue, and that's the only reason I have it. Just to give his shadow this nice complement blue. I'm going to add some to his shadow there, maybe to the boat shadow. All right, everyone, I'm going to call this painting done before this live stream gets too obscenely long. It's not a perfect painting by any means, but it was a lot of fun, and I went over just a tremendous amount of techniques and all kinds of things. So there's a ton to learn in this live stream. Hopefully you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed painting it. It was so much fun to paint with everybody and do this. So sorry, my camera's being weird. Anyways, I hope that you enjoyed it, and if you want to participate in more of my live stream tutorials, then you can go over to my Patreon page. For $5 a month, you'll have access to all of the tutorials that I do every week, and that's that. Again, hopefully you enjoyed this as much as I did, and I will see you in the next live stream, hopefully, as long as you come by my Patreon page. I'll see you next time. Take care. Peace.